Can you speak English naturally? Can you read naturally? Do you understand natives speaking? If you have problems with this, it's maybe because you have problems connecting or understanding when people connect the sounds of words. In this video, I am going to teach you how you can connect the sounds while reading to improve your pronunciation and perception of the English language. The Lord of the Rings. The book is British. Sometimes I like to read it trying to do a British accent. But no, here I am going to read with my normal accent, like Brazilian, American, from many different states and weird thing, you know? Yeah, I say this because my English is not from any specific place. I try to speak in a way that everybody can understand me. People normally say that my English is pretty simple, pretty easy to understand. Now I'm going to read the beginning of chapter 4, A Shortcut to Mushrooms. A Shortcut to Mushrooms. Nobody reads it like this. A shortcut to mushrooms. See, shortcut. People sometimes eliminate the sound of T. Shortcut. Shortcut. The sound of T is only a cut, a pause when you are reading. It's not shortcut. Shortcut? No, shortcut. Shortcut. A shortcut to mushrooms. Cut to. No, cut to. A shortcut to mushrooms. A shortcut to mushrooms. Repeat it, please. A shortcut to mushrooms. In the morning, Frodo woke refreshed. No, in the morning, Frodo woke refreshed. Woke refreshed. Woke refreshed. In the morning, Frodo woke refreshed. He was lying in a bower made by a living tree with branches laced and drooping to the ground. No, he was lying in a bower made by a living tree with branches laced and drooping to the ground. Lying in a bower made by a living tree with branches laced and drooping to the ground. Bilbo was very rich and very peculiar, and had been the wonder of the Shire for 60 years. Pay attention to and had been. The sounds of some consonants at the end of words almost disappear. And had been. We don't say had been. Or even worse, many times Brazilians say and had been. And had been. And had been the wonder of, you see? Wonder of the Shire for 60 years. Ever since his remarkable disappearance. An unexpected return. An unexpected return. The riches he had brought back from his travels had now become a local legend. Become a local legend. Local legend. Local legend. And it was popularly believed. And it was popularly believed, whatever the old folk might say. You see? Whatever the old folk might say. And if that was not enough for fame, was not enough for fame,
There was also his prolonged vigor to marvel at. Marvel at. Marvel at. Time wore on, but it seemed to have little effect on Mr. Baggins. At 90, he was much the same as 50. At 99, they began to call him well preserved. At 99, they began to call him well preserved. But unchanged would have been nearer the mark. Unchanged would have been nearer the mark. Would have been nearer the mark. There were some that shook their heads and thought this was too much for a good There were some that shook their heads and thought this was too much of a good thing. Thought this was, and thought this was. There were some that shook their heads. There were some that shook their heads and thought this was too much of a good thing. Too much of a good thing. There were some that shook their heads and thought this was too much of a good thing. Too much of a good thing. It seemed unfair. It seemed unfair that anyone should possess, apparently, perpetual youth as well as, reputedly, inexhaustible wealth, as well as.
Oh, well, words in English have many ways to be pronounced. Let's not worry about this today, alright? Today we only care about connecting sounds.